Hey everybody, welcome back! I hope that you are enjoying Fablehaven still, even though we can't be together to read it. One thing that I miss the most is you guys' reactions when we are reading together and talking about things that you might not understand and just having a good time. I just miss spending time with you. So I hope you are doing good. Day 3, here we go. I'm on page 94 if you want to follow along. Fablehaven Book 3, Grip of the Shadow Plague. And remember that Kendra is meeting with the Knights of the Dawn and she's being given an assignment. So, this is going to be exciting, guys. I hope you're ready for this. They returned to the same room where they had met the captain earlier. A person in a gold-trimmed mask stood by the fireplace. Once Warren and Kendra closed the door, Dugan removed his mask, prompting Kendra and Warren to do the same. "How did you like your first meeting as a knight?" Dugan asked Kendra. "It made me nervous," she admitted. "Good, that was part of the aim," he said. "We need to keep you on your toes now more than ever. Are you ready for your assignment?" "Sure," Kendra said. Dugan gestured toward a sofa. Warren and Kendra sat down together. Dugan remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. "Warren, have you ever heard of Lost Mesa?" Warren's eyebrows knitted together. "Can't say I have," he said. "Clearly you know about some of the secret preserves like Fablehaven," he said. "Lost Mesa is another of the secret preserves." "The refuge in Arizona," Warren deduced. "I know of it, though I hadn't heard the name. I've never been there." "Lost Mesa is on Navajo land. What do you know about the objects hidden on the secret preserves?" We know about the objects hidden on the secret preserves. "There are 5 secret preserves, each with a hidden artifact," Kendra said. "Together, the artifacts can open Zizix, the main demon prison." "The captain told me you would know," Dugan said. "Protecting these artifacts from exploitation is the top priority of the Knights of the Dawn. We have strong reason to suspect that the Society has learned the location of Lost Mesa. We sent in a small team to recover the artifact there in order to transfer it to a safer repository. The team has encountered some trouble, so I am personally going there to complete the operation. I need Kendra to come with me so that she can recharge the artifact before we extract it. We understand she has that ability." Warren held up his hand. "A few questions. First off, what sort of trouble did the current team encounter?" "They found the caverns where the artifact lies hidden," Dugan said. "The traps guarding the prize proved too much for the 3 of them. One of the team members perished, and the second was badly injured." "Sounds like an ideal situation for involving a 14-year-old girl," Warren said. "Why exactly do you need to charge the artifact?" "The captain thinks that if the artifact is operational, we can use its power to better conceal it." "Does he know which artifact it is?" Warren asked. "He or she does not," Dugan answered. "Won't activating the artifacts make them that much more dangerous if they fall into the wrong hands?" Warren asked. Dugan folded his arms. "Do you really think the Society won't find a way to charge them if they ever lay hands on them? If anything, charging the artifacts now will make Kendra safer. The Society won't be after her to jumpstart their prison keys." Warren got up from his seat and wiped his hands down his face. "Dugan, level with me. Is the captain the Sphinx?" He stared at the lieutenant intently. "That's one of many popular theories," Dugan smiled. "No theory I've heard has been right." "That is exactly what I would say if I were trying to conceal the truth," said Warren, "especially if one of the theories were accurate." "It's also what you'd say if the theories were all false," Dugan said. "Warren, I have to warn you, this line of questioning is unacceptable." Warren shook his head. "I can't elaborate why, but the question is important. I don't care who the captain is, as long as he isn't the Sphinx. Just swear that to me." "I'm not swearing one way or the other. Don't push me, Warren. I'll already have to converse with the captain about your sudden interest in his or her identity. Don't make it worse. I took an oath. For all of our sakes, I can't expose anything about the leader of the Knights." "Then Kendra isn't going to Lost Mesa," Warren said. "If necessary, she'll resign her knighthood." Warren turned to face her. "Would you mind having the shortest career in the history of the Knights of the Dawn?" he asked. "I'll do whatever you think is best," Kendra said. I don't appreciate being strong-armed, Dugan growled. I don't like being kept in the dark, Warren countered. Dugan, you know me. I don't ask for intelligence just to satisfy my curiosity. I've got a reason. Dugan rubbed his forehead. Look, will the two of you swear to keep the following information private, not a word to anyone? I promise, Warren said. Kendra nodded. The captain is not the Sphinx, Dugan said. We like that rumor because it distracts people from the truth, so don't spoil it. Now you tell me, what would it matter if the captain were the Sphinx? What do you know about the events at Fablehaven earlier this summer? Warren asked. Were there events out of the ordinary? Dugan asked. Then I can't tell you, Warren said. None of this is a huge deal, just me being overly cautious, which I tend to be when the fate of the world is on the line. If the captain sees fit to fill you in on what happened, maybe we can talk more. I hear you, Dugan said. I told you what you wanted. Are you ready to step aside and allow Kendra to come to Lost Mesa with me? Who else is going? Warren asked. Just me, Kendra, and Gavin. The new kid? Warren asked. Gavin was recruited because we need his help negotiating the caverns, Dugan explained. Will you step aside? No, said Warren, but if you promise to keep Kendra far from the caverns, and if you let me join you, and if she agrees, I'll think about it. I may even come in handy. I'm not too shabby at bypassing traps myself. I'll have to check with the captain, Dugan said. Understandable, Warren allowed. I'll need to speak with Kendra privately to gauge her willingness. Very well, Dugan said, replacing his mask and striding to the door. Sit tight. I'll be back soon. He exited. Warren crouched next to Kendra. What do you think? He whispered. Could the room be bugged? She asked. Doubtful, but not impossible, he replied. I don't know, Kendra said. I keep worrying that Vanessa may have us jumping at shadows. If the Sphinx were a friend, and if you came along, I would totally go, no hesitation. Here's my take, Warren whispered. If the Sphinx is a friend, sure, I'll be glad to help. But if he's an enemy, it will be even more important for me to get onto that preserve. I find the fact that they are after another artifact incredibly suspicious, especially since they seem intent on charging it. I'm still not convinced that the captain is not the Sphinx. Dugan is a good guy, but he would lie to protect a secret of such magnitude. Even if the captain isn't the Sphinx, he could just as easily be a puppet. At the very least, the Sphinx frequently trades secrets with the Knights. The Sphinx might be on our side, Kendra reminded him. He might, Warren said, but if he were on our side, I don't picture the Sphinx wanting anyone, himself included, to know the location of so many artifacts. On top of Vanessa's accusations, the idea of seeking multiple artifacts in such a short period of time smells fishy. After all, they were hidden separately for a reason. He leaned closer, his lips almost touching her ear, and spoke in the quietest whisper Kendra could imagine. I need to get onto that preserve, not only to help them recover the artifact, but to recover it myself. It would surely mark the end of my association with the Knights of the Dawn, but no one person should know the location of so many artifacts, especially when there is an implication that he may be our enemy. So we should go, Kendra concluded. This makes things very complicated for you, Warren continued in his faint whisper. It would be risky to simply go to Lost Mesa and help them extract the artifact, let alone try to steal it from them. You can play innocent. I won't involve you directly. I'll make it look like I was using this role as your protector for my own ends. There's a chance Dugan may try to hold you responsible. I can't guarantee your safety, but we'll make sure Tanu, Coulter, and Stan all know where you are so they can ensure that you end up back home. Kendra closed her eyes and pressed a hand to her forehead. The thought of trying to pull this off made her stomach twist. But if the society ended up opening Zizix, it would mean the end of the world as she knew it. Preventing this was worth taking a gut-wrenching risk, right? Okay, Kendra said. If you can come, let's do it. I hate to put you in this position, Warren whispered. Stan would wring my neck. But even though I hate the risk, and even though we might be wrong, I think we have to try. Kendra nodded. They sat in silence, listening to the logs snap and pop in the fireplace. Although the wait stretched much longer than Kendra had anticipated, she experienced no boredom. Her mind continued re-examining the situation, trying to foresee how everything would play out. It was impossible to predict, but she found herself holding firm to the resolution that she and Warren had to go to Lost Mesa and see what they could learn, and perhaps what they could steal. Nearly an hour later, Dugan returned, removing his mask as he came through the door. "Sorry about the wait," he said. "The captain is swamped right now. The captain mentioned that there were circumstances I could not know involving trouble at Fablehaven that would have justifiably made you extra cautious. Warren, if Kendra is willing to embark for Lost Mesa in the morning, you will be welcome to join her." Warren and Dugan looked at Kendra. "Fine with me," she said, feeling a little sorry for Tanu and Coulter. No matter how this was explained to Grandpa and Grandma, they were going to be furious. Chapter 6, Plague. So now we're back at Fablehaven. So there's two different storylines going on here. Seth threw the baseball as high and hard as he could, deliberately making it a tough catch for Mendigo. The primitive wooden puppet sprang into action the instant the ball took flight, dashing across the lawn. The human-sized lumberjack wore a baseball glove on one hand and a cap on his head. The golden hooks that served as joints jingled as he dove over a hedge, stretching out to trap the ball in his mitt. The nimble puppet landed in a somersault, then whipped the ball back at Seth as soon as he rolled to his feet. The ball hissed through the air, streaking straight instead of arcing high, and slapped into Seth's glove, stinging his hand. "Don't chuck it so hard," Seth instructed. "My hands have nerves." The lumberjack stood in a crouch, ready to make the next impossible grab. After playing catch with Mendigo in the yard and having a few rounds of batting practice, Seth was convinced Mendigo could land a multi-million-dollar contract in the major leagues. Mendigo never dropped the ball and never threw wild. When pitching to Seth, the puppet would put the ball wherever Seth asked, at whatever speed he wanted. Batting, Mendigo could smack line drives in any direction he was told, or he could just as easily smash home runs with his quick, fluid swing. Of course, eligibility might be an issue. Seth wasn't sure about Major League Baseball's policy regarding giant magical puppets. "Showboat," Seth called, throwing the baseball high. Mendigo was already running before the ball left Seth's hand. As the puppet closed in on the baseball, he shifted the glove from his hand to his foot and performed a smooth cartwheel, catching the ball with his gloved foot while upside down. The lumberjack tossed the ball back to Seth, still with some zip, but not as hard as his previous throw. Seth winged the ball sidearm in a new direction. Playing with Mendigo was a fun distraction, even though he knew the puppet was really his babysitter. Things had been tense since Coulter and Tanu had returned with news that Warren and Kendra had embarked on a mission for the Knights of the Dawn. Even without knowing all of the details, Seth felt sick with envy. Grandpa and Grandma had taken the news hard, becoming even more protective of Seth than usual. Technically, his 3-day period prohibiting even chaperoned excursions was over, but they had forbidden him from accompanying Coulter and Tanu on their assignment this afternoon. Grandpa had been monitoring the Nipsies while the others were gone, and had found that the warlike Nipsies were relentless in their thirst to conquer the others. Nothing he tried could dissuade them. In the end, he decided that the only way to save the untainted Nipsies was to relocate them. Coulter and Tanu were currently searching for a new habitat for the good Nipsies. A routine assignment, but Grandpa had suspended Seth from the woods until they figured out the story behind the new subspecies of dark creatures. Mendigo returned the ball to Seth, who threw it to the right, lower than his previous toss. Mendigo started after it and then halted, letting the ball drop to the grass and roll into a flower bed. Seth put his hands on his hips. Unlike Hugo, Mendigo had no will, he only followed orders, and the current order was to play catch. Continuing to ignore the ball, Mendigo rushed toward Seth at full speed. The action was baffling. Once, Mendigo had served Muriel the Witch, but some fairies had helped Kendra break that connection earlier in the summer. Mendigo only took orders from the staff of Fablehaven now. He had proven so useful that Grandpa had arranged for Mendigo to be allowed past the barriers protecting the yard and house. So why was Mendigo charging him? "Mendigo, stop!" Seth cried, but the puppet paid him no heed. Grandpa had issued Mendigo a standing order not to allow Seth out of the yard. Was the lumberjack confused? Seth was nowhere near the edge of the lawn. When Mendigo reached Seth, he dipped a shoulder, wrapped both arms around his legs, hoisted him into the air, and sprinted for the house. Slung over the wooden shoulder, Seth looked up and saw a group of dark fairies streaking toward them. They were unlike any fairies Seth had ever seen. Their wings did not glisten in the sunlight. Their raiment did not sparkle. In spite of the clear sky and the hot sun, each of the dozen fairies was shrouded in shadow. Faintly, a thin, dark contrail followed each one. Instead of light, these fairies radiated darkness. The fairies gained swiftly, but the house was not far away. Mendigo swerved to avoid inky streaks of shadow hurled from the fairies. Wherever the black energy struck, vegetation instantly withered. Grass turned white and sere, blossoms wilted and faded, leaves crumpled and dried. A dark streak zapped Mendigo on the back, and a black circle appeared on the brown wood. Bypassing the stairs, Mendigo clambered over the railing of the deck and clattered to the back door. The puppet dropped Seth, who thrust the door open and ordered the lumberjack inside. Yanking the door shut, Seth hollered for Grandpa. Seth now understood Mendigo's behavior. The puppet had one permanent command above all others: to protect the people of Fablehaven. The lumberjack had sensed the fairies coming and had known they meant trouble. Seth had a queasy feeling that if not for Mendigo, he might be a brown, shriveled corpse out on the lawn, the human version of a spoiled banana. "What is it, Seth?" Grandpa asked, emerging from the study. "I was just attacked in the yard by evil fairies," Seth gasped. Grandpa glowered at him. "Have you been trapping fairies again?" "No, I promise. I didn't do anything to provoke them," Seth insisted. "These fairies are different. They're wild and dark. Look out the window." Seth and his grandpa went to a window. The dismal flock of fairies were working their magic on a row of rose bushes, turning green leaves brown and vivid petals black. "I've never seen such a thing," Grandpa breathed, reaching for the door. "Don't!" Seth warned. "They'll come after you." "I have to see," Grandpa said, pushing the door open. At once, the fairies darted toward the deck, firing shadowy streaks. Grandpa promptly retreated indoors. The fairies hovered just beyond the deck. Several were laughing. A couple made faces. They desiccated a few potted plants on the deck before flitting away. "I've never heard of anything like these creatures," Grandpa said. "How did they get into the yard?" "They flew in as if they belonged," Seth replied, "just like any fairy would." "Fairies are creatures of light," Grandpa spoke weakly, uncertainly, as if hesitant to believe what was happening. "Some of the Nipsies turn dark," Seth reminded him. Frowning, Grandpa rubbed his chin. "These fairies aren't in a fallen state. When a fairy falls, she becomes an imp and would be banned from the yard. These fairies are in a darkened state, an undefined alteration that leaves them with full access to the gardens. I've never heard of anything like it. Perhaps I ought to place a temporary ban on all fairies until we get this sorted out. I'm not sure I can exclude only the dark ones." "Is Grandma still shopping?" Seth asked. "Yes," Grandpa said. "She won't be back for at least an hour. Dale is down at the stable. Tanu and Coulter are still out scouting for a place to relocate the good Nipsies." "What should we do?" Seth inquired. "I'll telephone Ruth," Grandpa said. "Warn her to be careful when entering the yard. I'll send Mendigo to fetch Dale." "Can we get in touch with Tanu and Coulter?" Seth asked. "No, but they have Hugo with them," Grandpa said. "We'll have to trust that they can take care of themselves." He turned to address the big puppet. "Mendigo, at full speed, go retrieve Dale from the stables, keeping him safe from harm. Steer clear of any dark creatures like those fairies." Grandpa opened the door, and Mendigo raced out onto the deck, vaulted the railing, and sped across the lawn. "What should I do?" Seth asked. "Keep watch from the windows," Grandpa said. "Don't go outside. Let me know if you see anything unusual. After I call your grandmother, I'm going to make a more concerted effort to get the Sphinx on the line." Grandpa hurried away, and Seth went from room to room, checking through all the windows, trying to spot the dark fairies. After 3 laps, he gave up. Apparently, they had flown away. To test his assumption, he opened the door and ventured out onto the deck. Hadn't Grandpa done the same thing a moment ago, but with the fairies in sight? Seth was ready to retreat, but no gloomy fairies attacked. Had Grandpa already banished them from the yard? Seth sat down in a chair, gazing out at the garden. He realized this was the first time he had been outside unsupervised since getting busted for visiting the Nipsies. He felt an instant itch to bolt into the woods. Where would he go? Maybe to the tennis court to check on how Doran and Newell were doing? Or to the pond to chuck rocks at the naiads? No, After the scare with the fairies, he had to grant reluctantly that Grandpa was probably right about this being a foolish time to roam the woods. Besides, if he got caught, he would probably lose Grandpa's trust forever and end up grounded for all eternity. He noticed a few normal fairies fluttering around the yard. They approached the dead roses and began healing them with glittering flashes. Wilted petals blushed, curled leaves unfurled, brittle limbs became supple and green. The fairies were evidently not banned yet. The others must have voluntarily deserted the yard. Seth watched the fairies continue restoring the damaged vegetation. He did not try to move in for a closer look. Even the pretty fairies had no fondness for him. They were still resentful that he had accidentally turned one of them into an imp the previous summer. They had punished him, the fairy had been restored, and he had apologized a lot, but the fairies still mostly spurned him. As his excitement over the dark fairies wore off in their absence, Seth ached with boredom. If Grandpa would trust him with the keys to the dungeon, he could probably find a way to pass the time down there. He wished Mendigo would return. He wished he could switch places with Kendra off on an adventure so secretive nobody had trusted him with the details. He even almost wished he was shopping with Grandma. What could he do? There were toys in the attic bedroom, lots of them, but he had played with them so much over the summer that they failed to entice him anymore. Maybe he could rip up some of his clothes and leave them for the brownies to mend. It was always interesting to see the improvements they made. Seth stood up ready to go inside when a vaporous personage emerged from the woods. The misty, translucent figure glided toward the deck. Seth realized, to his horror, that the ghostly apparition looked like Tanu, except wispy and insubstantial. Had Tanu been killed? Was this his spirit come to haunt them? Seth watched as the gaseous form drew nearer. Its face looked grave. "Are you a ghost?" Seth called. The vaporous Tanu shook his head and motioned as if drinking something from a bottle. "A potion?" Seth asked. "That's right. You have a potion that turns you into a gas like the one Kendra said Warren used when you were battling the giant panther." Tanu nodded, drifting nearer. A light breeze arose, forcing him off course and temporarily dissipating his misty body. When the breeze died, Tanu reformed and continued until he reached the deck. Unable to resist, Seth passed a hand through the insubstantial Samoan. The gas felt more like powder than mist. None of it stuck to his hand. Tanu gestured for Seth to open the back door. Seth complied and followed Tanu into the house. "Grandpa, Tanu came back! He's made of gas!" Indoors, Tanu held together better, which made him look more solid. Seth swatted a hand through Tanu's stomach, making the vapor shift and swirl. "What is it, Tanu?" Grandpa asked, hustling into the room, cell phone in hand. "Was there trouble?" The Samoan nodded. "Where's Coulter? Is he all right?" Tanu shook his head. "Dead?" Grandpa asked. Tanu shook his head slightly and shrugged. "Does he need our help?" Tanu tilted a hand from side to side. "He doesn't need our help immediately." Tanu nodded. "Are we in immediate danger?" Tanu shook his head. "How long before you're back to normal?" Tanu scrunched his brow, then held up one hand, the fingers spread wide. 5 minutes? Grandpa verified. Tanu nodded. The back door opened and Dale entered with Mendigo. "What's going on?" Dale asked, taking in Tanu's altered state. "Mendigo showed up at the stables and abducted me." "We have a problem," Grandpa said. "Dark fairies attacked Seth in the yard." Eyes wide, Tanu gestured vigorously. "Dark fairies attacked you too?" Seth asked. Tanu stabbed a finger at Seth, nodding emphatically. "Have you noticed anything unusual with any of the creatures today?" Grandpa asked Dale. "Nothing like dark fairies," he replied. "I called Ruth," said Grandpa. "She'll be careful coming into the house. I can't reach the Sphinx still." "When will he solidify?" Dale asked, eyes flicking over to Tanu. "In a few minutes," Grandpa said. "Mind if I grab some water?" Dale asked. "Might do us all some good," Grandpa said. They went to the kitchen where Dale poured each of them a tall glass of cool water from the fridge. While Seth sipped his drink, Tanu coalesced into his old self, a brief fizzing sound accompanied by the rapid transformation. "Sorry about that," Tanu said. "I'm not sure I would have escaped without the aid of a potion." "What happened?" Grandpa said calmly. Tanu took a sip of water. As planned, we were scouting for a new home for the gentle Nipsies. We were investigating that crescent-shaped meadow near where the forgotten chapel used to stand. You know the one? Sure, Dale said. Grandpa nodded. I would if I was ever allowed to explore, Seth grumbled. We came across a swarm of squabbling fairies weaving around like dog fighters, some light, some dark. From what we saw, when the dark ones got their mouths on the light ones, the light fairies were extinguished. They became dark, but the light fairies didn't appear to be converting any dark ones. How many fairies? Grandpa asked. There must have been nearly 30, Tanu said. The brawl looked about even at first, but before long, the dark outnumbered the light 3-1. Coulter and I decided we ought to break it up before all the fairies were changed. He had that crystal that makes people dizzy and thought he might be able to disrupt the battle enough to give the light fairies a chance to escape. The instant we stepped into the clearing, the dark fairies left off tangling with the light ones and swarmed us. There was almost no time to think. Coulter urged me to go gaseous. Hugo put himself between us and the onslaught, and they hit him hard with murky magic that withered the grass on his body and left him spotted with black marks. Holding his crystal high, Coulter ordered Hugo to retreat to the barn, which was the right call. There was little Hugo could do against so many tiny enemies. The golem obeyed, and the fairies swooped at Coulter. The crystal disrupted their flight. Most crashed to the ground. A few managed to land on Coulter. They started biting him, and then he vanished. And that's where I'm gonna stop for today. Just here's the picture of the gaseous Tanu and Seth sticking his hand through him. It's kind of funny. And we're glad that Tanu made it, but something happened to Coulter, and we will figure that out later. I'm on page 113, and we will continue tomorrow. Guys, I am so excited that you are continuing to listen to Fablehaven, and I'm sad that we can't all be together and do it because there are some exciting things happening and some exciting things that are going to happen, but I wanted to continue this because it's an exciting adventure, and I love sharing it with you. So I hope you all are good. Check my website for fun things to do, and if you have questions about your assignments, let me know. I will talk to you guys later, okay? Bye!